Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, sponsored by Soulway Massage. This is the place where you'll be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am introducing you to a new friend of mine and yours. Her name is Colleen Lindburg. Colleen, thank you for joining me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here.
It's so nice to meet you. And I was telling you before we hit record how beautiful your backdrop is. So tell everyone where you're located.
Yeah, so I live in Costa Rica, and I think even the story of me getting here is like super relevant to like even the conversation we're going to have today, which I think is going to be really, really fun. But yeah, Costa Rica.
Yes, we definitely want to jump into hearing your story and would love to hear all about that journey. Before we do that, tell everyone what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I am a soul mission activator, and what that actually means, and some people are like, "Oh my God, that's such a cool title." I was like, "I know." Like when it dropped in to like own, I was like, "Yes, let's do this." It's my job and really mission on earth is to help people really understand their soul's mission, like why they're actually here on earth and what they're actually here to do on earth. And it shows up a lot in entrepreneurship, but I do it a lot in like normal activities and helping people really hone in on that message inside of them and then hone into their like truth and the power within them and really unshakably own who they really are in life.
I love that. And the question I like to kick things off with is how have you embraced this idea of starting again?
Yeah, and you know what? Like, when you sent that over to me, I could have filled it out in 500 million ways because I really feel
Yes,
like we rebirth consistently all the time in our life, as we
absolutely.
grow, yeah, and expand and move through. And, I think that starting over and maybe not fully over, like in like one, like, and then you're moving to a new country, like I've done twice in my life. But I
Yes.
think that, yeah, I know it's kind of funny. But I think that like the starting over energy really brings us back to like curiosity and brings us back to like exploration and like this journey that we're actually on and honoring that journey. So like I could speak to so many stories, Shauna, like when I stepped into starting over. And I know we're going to get into some of that meat, but I really believe it's like a rebirthing process that we go through as humans.
Oh, sure. Well, that's a great segue. I would love to hear the meat of your story now. Let's do it.
Okay. You're
Where,
like,
tell
please.
us a little bit about this journey and how you got to doing what it is that you do today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, like the whole like entrepreneurial journey has its own like mechanism, but like let me
Oh my
I
gosh,
feel like
yes.
yeah, like and like all the ups and downs and starting one business and moving into another, like I've got all of that in the space of like my lifetime. And most of you guys you may see a picture of me and be like, yeah, right. How old is this girl? Okay. Just want to make sure I'm
Yeah.
42. Okay. It's telling everybody. Okay. So I've got a couple decades under my belt, even though I look like I'm 25, which I thank my mom for my amazing genes. Um,
Yes, you've got some great genetics. You are beautiful and you do not look your age.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. So much. Thank you.
But also, I will say 42 also sounds like so young because
Yeah.
you're younger than I am. It's funny how those ages change. The closer we get to them and as we pass them, they no longer hold the same weight that they once did. And it's just a number.
No. Yeah, and I think that as we continue to explore in life and like adventure for me is a number one thing which is part of the story of how I actually got to Costa Rica, which I'm going to share in 2 seconds, I promise. But I think
Yes.
that it keeps us young and it keeps us vibrant and it keeps us
Oh, for sure.
curious, right? So this has happened twice in my life where I literally have sold everything and literally moved countries. So I think it's relevant to start with like the 2017 experience of me going to
Hmm.
California. I'm Canadian. So I grew up in Canada, grew up in Winnipeg, and most people are like, where is that? It's like the center of Canada where nobody knows where it is, and there's less than 1 million people that live there, and it's freaking
Got
cold.
it.
Okay,
Yes. Well,
period. You
that's what
don't
I
want to
think
go to
about.
Winnipeg. You know what I mean?
All of Canada is so cold. I'm just like, why does anyone live there? It's the
Yeah.
same reason that people are probably asking why anyone lives in Texas, especially this time of year. Why does
Mhm.
anyone live here? Couldn't tell you. It's
Yeah.
hot as Hades here.
Oh my gosh. Well, I moved in 2017 to California into Palm Desert in June, not even
Oh my gosh.
realizing,
Culture shock.
yeah, what that even means. Okay. So, like, I was at this point in time in my life where, like, I had been out of a relationship for a couple years, but him and I had gone back and forth, and he ended up starting dating a friend of mine. And I was like,
Oh,
I
wow.
can't handle this. Like, I need to get out of here. And it was like I was escaping life when I decided
Yeah, yeah.
to move to California. And I made up that the universe wanted me to go there. Like, I saw all these signs that it was time for me to go and to leave, but it really
Yes.
was like an ego bust, you know? Like,
Okay.
I was like, yeah, it was like,
Why
yeah,
did you pick California? Did you know anybody there?
no, and I'd never even been.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Okay.
So my
Wow.
mom thinks I'm nuts, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
when I moved to Costa Rica, she was used to this, right? It happened 5 years ago. She was like, okay, whatever. It's the
Sure.
same thing from five
Okay.
years. We're
Yes.
okay. Like, we got this one covered. But she's like, what do you mean you're going to drive to California with your 3 animals in your car and you're going to
Oh,
sell
wow.
everything except for what you could fit in it? I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And she's
Yeah,
like, you've never
that's
even been
great.
there. And I'm like, I know. Where are you going to stay? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Literally, that's how it
Wow.
started.
Listen, this is like a daydream of mine. It's a recurring daydream where I just get in the car and start driving with whatever fits in my car, and I just keep driving.
Yes.
So I totally understand the mental space
Mhm.
that you were probably in to make that decision. I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound crazy at all to me. Like, oh yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. And, at the time in my world, finances weren't as flowing as I would desire them to be. I was on a little bit of a tighter
Yes.
budget, but I was like, we're doing this. I'm trusting. I'm going to go. I'm going to move. I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
So I packed up my SUV, and luckily I had an SUV. I had an 8-seater, like a Honda Pilot. So I got quite a bit of stuff inside of there, like boxes I didn't even
Okay.
open through my whole experience. Like, I was like, why did I even
Oh
bring
wow.
this
Okay.
stuff? But literally sold everything, and whatever I couldn't sell, I donated. So it, like, literally clean slate pretty much. I drove to Winnipeg, saw my family first, and then took 5 days to drive south to California. And every day I was thinking about, where do I want to stop? And my mom asked to have an app to be able to track me, so that because she was
Yes.
like, my daughter's crazy. She's driving through the US
This
by
is
herself.
totally something I would ask my children. I would be like, okay, live your life, chase your dreams. I'm all about that, but I need to track
Yeah.
you every step of the
Yeah.
way.
So sometimes she'd call me like, I don't see you on the app. I'm like, Mom, we're in a dead zone right now. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have Wi-Fi. Like, I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. Like, like, I'm just like, chill out. Okay, everything's gonna be fine.
Yes.
Okay, just relax. Like, so, after like multiple experiences, I call them, on the road, my cat deciding to wind down the window in the back seat by putting her paw on the window in the
Oh
middle of the
God.
mountains in Montana, and sticks her head out the window, where I'm like, I'm about to lose my cat on the highway. Like, I'm just like, the cat's going
Oh
out,
my God.
and the dog getting loose, and like almost getting hit by a car, and like just this whole, like, it was like not easy. It wasn't an easy, free flowing journey. We'll say lots of
Yes. Yes.
challenges. And then I got to California, found an Airbnb, rented it for 2 weeks, and I Palm Desert had all of these places open, and I was like, wow, and it's really cheap to stay there for the night. I'll go to Palm Desert and root in and figure it out then later. I go to
Yeah.
the grocery store, and and the guy's like, you're not from here. And I'm like, no, I'm from Canada. Why are you here right now? And I was like, because I want to be. They're like, no Canadians come in June. I was like, why? Well, it's like
Why?
110 degrees here. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I
I
like
don't
no
even know what that feels
reference
like. I know what that feels like, and it's horrible.
Yeah, in the desert too, right? So it's the same type of energy from like Texas, right?
Uh-huh.
But it was so
Yeah.
interesting, for 3 weeks I pretty much watched 90210 in the Airbnb and didn't go out and do
Yes.
anything. And I was like, 3 weeks later, I was like, dude, you've got to start doing something with your life. Like, you didn't move to California to just sit in this
To watch TV.
Airbnb,
Yes.
hang out and watch 90210, like you got to start meeting some people. So I was like, oh my God. So I used to do a lot of business networking back up in Canada. And it was like, well, how do I find someone to like meet some
Yeah.
people? And they're like, I used to be a part of this business networking called BNI. And I was like, let's see if there's any BNI
Yes.
chapters. So there was a lot of them. So I just, the next morning, there was a chapter meeting. I registered to go as a guest. And then all of a sudden, I'm like the new shiny object, right? Because
Yep.
the desert is pretty tight. Like, you don't see a lot of tourists or visitors in the middle of summer there. And it's like all of a sudden, who is this? And I'm like, yeah, I moved here from Canada. And they're like, oh my God, you should come with us to this mixer and you should do this. Now I started getting
Oh, amazing.
out and moving through life and experiencing life. But I didn't understand the dynamics of why I needed to go at the time I needed to go because I was running away from life. But I learned so much about myself through this whole experience. Like, I had panic attacks that I never even knew. Like, I was the stable, hustle, ambitious girl, independent, that like moved through life, that had her shit together to most part, to the degree of,
Yep.
and then I moved to California and I'm like, all of a sudden it's like, you don't know anyone. You're in the middle of this thing. Like, there's nobody around. Most of your friends don't even call you anymore. And I'm like, oh, were they really my friends? And like,
Oh gosh, yes.
you go through this whole like experience, but it was one of the best times of my life, meaning I learned so much about who I actually was through this whole entire thing, what was important to me, what made sense, and I ended up moving back to Canada a little while later. Like, I stayed for the 6 months. And around month 4, I was like, am I rooting? Like, am I grounding into this? Am I staying? Am I getting all of the stuff I need to get to stay longer? Or am I going back? And I had a feeling I needed to go back. So this was actually in 2018, and then 2019 moved through where I actually came home. But it was such an interesting journey, the whole entire mechanism. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, then how did you get to Costa Rica?
Yeah. So um ended up, fast forwarding a few years, grounded back in, got in bed again. Like, it took me 3 months to actually get a bed, which was actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
Imagine sleeping on the floor with just blankets and like really evaluating your life when you have one plate and one pan and you're trying to figure out like, how do you cook two things? Like, it was an interesting, because I sold all of it,
Yeah.
everything, right? And so grounded back in, and then it was early 2022. And I knew something was brewing. So the work I do, I'm very much aligned in intuition. I very much listen, spiritually. I'm really tapped into that space. And I kept hearing this, like, you're going south. And I'm like, okay. Like, I just kind of felt, I thought it
Yeah.
was going to be Florida. And I thought I was going to go root down in there. And then I just kept the doorway open. Okay, what does this look like?
Yeah.
And then let it kind of float. And it was the spring of 2022. It was like, okay, you're going to Costa Rica. And I was like, all right, when am I leaving? Okay, that was the first thing. And they're like, the fall of 2022. Okay, good. Do I start selling and getting stuff organized now and donating? Yes. So I was like, okay, so now we got 6 months, right? So I've got a little bit more leverage, right? I've
Yes.
got some time to flow through this, to figure some stuff out. And I just kept hearing this word, Uvita, Uvita, Uvita. And I was like, what is this Uvita? And then all of a sudden, a friend of mine who lives out in BC made a post on Instagram, was like, hey, me and the family are moving to Costa Rica and we're going to Uvita. And I was like, whoa,
Stop it.
I think I'm supposed to go there. Yeah. And then
Yes.
literally a week later, she made a post about the place that I literally live in. And she was like, hey guys, there's this place available. And I was like, called the guy, got the place, lined everything, moved it through, got everything sold. I had animals. I had my animals at the time, and I knew the dog wasn't coming. I knew the dog needed a new home with an owner that was very alpha male that would let her be a dog. It's a whole long story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ended up finding this beautiful older man that like loves animals, and like she's in the exact space she needs to be in. Like, it was just like a beautiful
That's
experience.
amazing.
And it just all ended up working out. Like, every piece moved through. So like, literally, I've never been to Costa Rica. Okay. So we got this mechanism running through, but I kind of had like a little bit of stability, knew some people here, kind of was like,
Yeah.
okay, like we're kind of moving in. And like, literally, it was October 15th. I flew out. A girlfriend of mine decided she wanted to come and join me on the trip for about a month. Like, she's like, I'll take a month, help you get settled, ground
That's
in.
amazing.
Yeah, it was really a fun experience. But Costa Rica isn't for the faint of heart. Like, you can come here on a vacation and do your thing and go in the jungle and experience, but it is one of the most uprooting countries, meaning
Mm.
you need to deal with your stuff here and you can't hide from it. It's like the earth brings it up that you have to deal with your traumas, your anxiety, your like all of it. So the first 6 months is just like, why did I come here again?
Yes.
Like I know, although you look out and you're like, oh yeah, that's why.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
It's beautiful. Yes.
yeah, but it's like,
That's amazing.
yeah, it's been really cool. It's been really cool.
I think it's amazing when one thing leads to another thing.
Mhm.
And I feel like our experiences are always preparing us for what's coming next, which I see in your story very
Yeah.
clearly. But what do you think inspires you most about your story?
The availability that I have to trust myself and to trust the intuitive flow and to really lead life through that calling, because being here now, I understand the impact. I didn't know at the time, like consciously, why all the pieces were playing out it was, but my
Right.
ability to clear energy and to be really potent has only amplified the people that I'm serving now in the community here, and the alignment within my heart center, and actually understanding even deeper who I really am. And I wouldn't be able to do this if I was still up in Canada. And not to knock Canada as a
Right.
country, but it's like it kept me so closed in and like in a certain energy where, like, when they say pure vita, pure life, that's what we really do. Like,
Yes.
we're patient. Nobody forces anything on it. Like, you're like, the guy's like, yeah, I'll be there next week. It's like, that's the only answer. It's not like, well, dude, can I pay you more to come tomorrow? No, no. I'll be there next week. And it's just, life is just different. And not
Yeah.
understanding or knowing that until you get here and root in and you actually you remember, because I believe it's always in us. You remember what's important in life. Like, there's a
Yes.
lot of stuff here you can't get in North America. Like, you can't even buy Swiffers in this country. And I didn't know at the time how important a Swiffer was to me until I flew back in December to actually get one and bring it back. But I actually don't even use my Swiffer anymore. Like, it's like one of those things, you just use your broom. Okay, just use the broom and you sweep with the broom. Like, and it's just like, things are so different. And it's like
Yeah.
you remember the essence of being able to walk up to that tree and pick a fruit off of the tree and eat it right off of the tree. Like, that is the connection that Costa Rica brings into my life. So, yeah.
Well, listen, I've been to Costa Rica and my experience was not that, because I did go and stay at a resort and I was on vacation. It was an escape for me at the time. It was just purely a vacation. I do have the water bottle with the
Pure
Pura
Vita.
Vida on it. Yeah. It's my
Yay.
favorite water bottle, actually. But yeah, I think my soul is yearning for that.
Mhm.
Um, I think wanderlust is probably the closest word that I've had that kind of describes this desire to go and just, and I like the way you say root in. I think that is kind of what I've always wanted to live somewhere else, but I think that's what it's about for me is going and actually rooting in and being a part of the community and
Mhm.
different types of nature. Like, I don't know. I think it's just your story is beautiful. And I think, yes, absolutely inspiring that you can um, so fully embody and trust your intuition and follow where you are guided. Of course, it's always ourselves guiding ourselves, right? But you trust
Yeah.
it and you do it. And your experience to go to California and then back home, and then the next time you had the calling, you didn't question it. You were just like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I feel
Yeah.
like in my work, that's what I am attempting to teach people. I might teach them how to attract the love of their life or write a book or whatever, but really it's about learning how to trust yourself.
Hmm.
So it's being able to hear the whispers enough that you even pay attention to it at first, and then to actually follow the guidance is the second step, which I think you're very beautifully doing. So well done.
Oh, thank you for seeing me. So thank you for that. And it wasn't easy at first. So I always like
Sure.
tell this story of like me going out to the garbage. And I was taking the garbage out and all I heard was, you need to take your keys. And I'm like, why do I need to take my keys? I'm going to the garbage, right? So go to the garbage, come back, the door is mysteriously locked. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, and I lived in a place like it wasn't like everything was locked. I've got animals inside. We're in the middle of winter, and I'm like, right. But luckily, the day
Mm-hmm.
before, I listened to my intuition and unlocked one of the windows. So, like, randomly unlocked one of the windows. Hey, just in case tomorrow you don't listen, then we're gonna give you a leeway in. However, it was 8 feet up. So then I had to figure out a chair and
Oh
figure
God.
out tricep dips. Like, and my triceps are like the weakest
Yes.
muscle of my body. You should have seen it. It was like, if someone videotaped it, it was so entertaining.
The best way to attract love is to love yourself. For many of us, we are only just beginning to learn what it truly means to care for ourselves, and that can begin with your body. A happy body leads to a happy mind and a happy spirit. This is what self-care is built upon. Now, if you are local, you must visit Soul Way Massage in Round Rock, Texas. Jen will help you to shift, release, and transform your emotional and physical blocks. Jen's ability to read a body and respond is nothing short of magical. She uses a custom approach for every client that includes various healing massage modalities like Thai yoga massage and lymphatic drainage therapy. Book your first body session at Soulway Massage with code LOVE. The links are in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show.
But I remember that so clearly, those small things. And when I started
Yes.
trusting that call, then I was able to amplify the bigger calls and
For
move
sure.
through this and hold the energy of that. And it's like, and the more I do this, the more fun my life gets, the more easy
Oh, for
my life
sure.
gets. And, like the cooler people I get to meet, like we got connected because of that hit too. Like it was like, you should be on that podcast. And I was like, okay, so like
Yeah.
I listen to that and live it.
Well, that's true. And that's a really, that's such a beautiful example of two different people trusting the call when it doesn't necessarily make sense. And I think that example of taking your keys to the garbage, that makes sense to me because trusting your intuition is a muscle that has to be strengthened. And so when you start paying attention to the little tiny things that make no sense at all, and you're like, why would I take my keys to the garbage? Well, it's because you're learning how to trust yourself. It's just practicing that it doesn't make sense right now with the information you have, but 3 days later or whatever, you're going to be like, oh, I get it now. Now I understand. And that's when you strengthen, like, okay, now I know what that sounds like. I know what it feels like. And next time I know, because it's going to sound crazier,
Oh,
the
yeah.
next thing that you hear, you're going to trust it more. You're going to be like, no, I don't lead myself astray. I know that it doesn't make sense now, but it will one day. And then that is when life becomes magical.
Mm-hmm. And I love magical life. Like, and it's like, I look back at
Yes.
all the challenges I went through to get to this point in time, and I honor her. Like, I honor her courage and
Yeah.
her action and her stepping in. Like, I look back at, Colleen of 2017, and I look back of Colleen of 2011, even that was a pivotal part of my life too. And I'm like, and I just look back and I go, you got this, girl. Like, I honor you.
Totally.
And like, I would only encourage anybody listening to this too, is to start really feeling that inside of you. Like, where are you hesitating now to actually take an action that's going to
Yes.
move you through into a new evolution potentially? And yeah, it's scary some days. It really, like, I
Sure.
moved to Costa Rica technically on my own, like not knowing anyone.
Yes.
And everybody here is coupled up with families. Like, there's not a lot.
Oh,
It's
wow.
all good, like, and the whole perspective of the whole thing. But like, I'm like, it's just, we don't know why at the beginning sometimes why things show up for us. Our job is to keep listening and trusting
For
and
sure.
moving, because it takes us into these beautiful
Yep.
experiences. Yeah.
It does. Well, and I always say that I always end up better off than I could have chosen for myself. When I
Yeah.
choose to trust my guidance, I'm always led to a place where it's bigger and better than I could have imagined for myself. So never once have I been like, well, that didn't work out. No, it's quite the opposite. It's always better than I could. If I were left to my own devices and had to control all the things, it would be so small and limited and compared to where I end up. But anyways, let me get back to my question. So,
sorry, I could take you everywhere. I
I could
know.
derail all day. I know. I do that all by myself. So, so as you look back on your journey, I'm in the midst of changing this question because what I used to say was, what is the common theme in your lessons? But I just had a conversation with this lovely soul the other day, and she was like, I don't like the word lessons. She said, it just feels harsh and it feels like you have to learn something. And she's like, I don't buy that. She said, I think we gain wisdom. And so I'm like, okay, that does feel gentler. I do like that. So I think the question I'm attempting to, in a very long way, get to is, what do you think is the common theme in this wisdom that you've gained along your journey?
Yeah, and I've kind of briefly touched on it already, but like it's more so like
Hmm.
have the courage to really step in, because when I've actually
Yeah.
done that in all different ways, like I can look back on, reaching out to the board of directors, the CEO of the board of directors for this massive consulting company back 12 years ago when I used to do leadership development, like that opened up a massive door for me because I had the courage to send the email, or I had the
Right.
courage to send the DM to someone who I wanted to be on my podcast, or, obviously the courage to move to California to learn about the next phase of me, or Costa Rica, or stepping into Costa Rica, or like, I know this quarter is about to like blow up in my world in a beautiful way, but there's courage that's needed to step in and speak that or invest in that or decide in
Oh,
that.
sure.
And it's always been the courage, have the courage to step in, have the courage to make the
Yeah.
move, have the courage to walk up to that man and, talk to him, have the courage. And through that, all of these experience developed because I just had the courage. So
Yeah. Well, I think that, yeah, that's obvious and clear to anyone hearing your story. And I think there's a misconception. A lot of times people think courage means you're not scared.
oh,
And the reality is, in those moments of taking brave, courageous action, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of uncertainty, but it's what makes you courageous is doing it anyways.
yes. And like I can look at all those times and the breath I took, before getting in the car to go to the airport to Costa Rica, like the breath I took when I sold my vehicle in Ontario and handed those keys off,
Oh
right?
gosh,
Like
yes.
the breath, like it was like, okay, whew, we got this. Come on, you got this. Come on, that this is an alignment. Like, just take act. Like, and
Yeah.
even all of it, even the like a few months ago, there was a guy up at this restaurant that I walked up to, and I had to literally get up off the table, jump up and down for a bit. He didn't see this; I was behind a wall. Breathe a little
Yes.
bit. My girlfriend's like, "Come on, you can do this," and her husband's like, "You only regret the chances you don't take." I was like, "Are you quoting me right now?"
So true.
And I was like,
Yes.
and then I walked over, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do, right? But
Yeah,
still,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, it's there. We have to move through it too. And I have a bold energy. I'm a rebel. Like, that's an energy I hold. But as a
Yeah.
rebel, we still have to convince, talk ourselves into, or align the body to meet me there.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's no surprise to me that I'm meeting all these women who are self-proclaimed rebels because I always tell everyone I break all the
Yeah.
rules. Like I think rules, and a lot of times rules are just meant to keep us safe, and I think they're meant to be questioned. But
I
I
agree.
think it's amazing
Yeah.
how many different women that I'm meeting and I'm like, oh yeah, 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 girl. Yeah. Cause I'm like, you're just mirroring what I
Yeah.
am back to myself, which is amazing. But when you think back to the younger you, because listen, the younger me was not courageous or bold or a rule breaker, but what advice would you give the younger you?
Yeah, like I was though a rule breaker and I pushed a lot of the boundaries. Like when I was like 13, I used to sneak out of my parents' house at like 2 o'clock in the morning with a girlfriend who stole her parents' car at 13, didn't have a license, and she picked me up and we would drive around town till 5 a.m. So like I did that kind of stuff. But I think that because I doubted myself a lot growing up and I looked to other people and I tried to become other people or what you wanted me to be instead of actually owning who I really was, I would say to myself like follow your truth and lead with you, and it the people that are meant to be in your world will show up in your world. because I was always
Yes.
fighting that, right? I was like, well, my cousin has this and I want to become my cousin, or, that person has this. Even the early parts of my business, like I've been in business for 14 years, the early parts of my business, I was the same way. What do you need me to be? Sure, I can build a website, or I can, how to build a
Yes.
website on Google, right? You can go to Google and figure out anything, right? And like,
Yes, it's true.
that's how I started. And it was interesting though, the doubt I always had inside of me until I
Oh my gosh, yes.
dropped in and started actually believing that this was actually
Yeah.
possible and this was who I am, and all the things. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that self-doubt is strong enough, but especially when you are a rebel going against the grain,
Mhm.
everyone around you starts also vocalizing that doubt and concern.
Yes. You can't do
And
that.
so I think it requires an extra amount of courage, I think, because you have to stand in your conviction and be like, no, I trust myself and I'm doing this because even though it looks crazy or even though it doesn't look like it's going to work out, even though you and I are both scared, like I know this is the right path. And that is such an amazing thing to be able to do for yourself, but also to help other people get there and be able to see that in their eyes the moment when they're like, no, I trust myself. It's the best thing.
I agree. And that's why, like, some of the juiciest work I do, and I use that word on purpose because every time I say it, I
Yes.
imagine biting into a peach. So, like,
Yes.
the juiciest work I do is helping somebody really own who they are. And when they can step into that and fully be there, embodied in their light, that's where the actual real impact comes into play. And, like, that for me is everything.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, so when you look, we talked about the past you and the current you. And when you look toward the future, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
Yeah, well, like I play in the field that everything is possible, like every single dynamic. And I live and breathe in the philosophy of if it's in you, it's for you. So if you can envision a life where you live in a beach house on the beach and you have this beautiful family and this connected love, and you make 100K months in business, if that's what you dream of and desire, that's already in you. It's in the field, in the ethers of the universal alignment. Our job now is to collapse the time and bring it in. So
Yep.
everything is possible for me moving forward. And that image I just gave you and all the aspects is an actual timeline that's collapsing in my life at this moment of time. I just need to get out of the way. I'm like
Well, that's always the thing, right? Like people, anytime I'm talking to a woman about dating or finding love again, I'm like, you are literally the only thing standing in your way of meeting
oh,
your
for
person.
sure. Yeah. Like Costa Rica here where I am, the guy that I desire to be with isn't here yet. And I know he's
Mm.
not. I'm going to meet him. I'm most likely meeting him in Salt Lake City when I'm there in September. Like I just feel there's the pull, but he's in my ether field. Like
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So I could tell you wholeheartedly, I was in that same space. So I actually have created this entire course around fi- attracting your person. Um, because there was a moment before I met my now partner, I could feel him. I
Yeah.
knew that he was on his way to me or I was on my way to him. Like we were on our way to meeting each other. And there was a certain part, like I am really impatient by nature. And so I'm working on learning patience. And this, I think, is a lifetime
Have
lesson
fun.
for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, yes, got it. Still working on it. But I wanted to meet him now. I wanted it to happen
Mm,
now. And I was like, why isn't it happening now? And I was trying to, collapse timelines. And there got to be a point one day where I had to realize either I'm readying myself to meet him or he's not ready yet, but that it was happening. And so I
yeah.
could just then sit in, okay, until the moment I see him standing in front of me, I'm going to be focused on what do I need to do to be the partner that I know
Yes.
he wants and needs. And so it was a much softer way for me to approach trying to learn how to fucking be patient.
I love it. And I'm the same. Like I'm not like the impatient person in this. I believe in all of it. So I
That's
know I
amazing.
had work to do over the last few years on
Sure.
myself to vibrate in the vibration of the woman he's desiring to have in his world as he was doing the same to match me.
Right.
But I was sitting with a Bribri tribe. So Bribri tribe in Costa Rica is one of like the 5 main indigenous tribes. And one of the elders was sitting with me one day. Anyways, long story of how this happened. But
Yes.
it was one of those cool things. I just kept following my intuition. And all of a sudden now I'm in this mountain home with this elder, like hanging out for the night.
Yeah.
And it
Wow.
was
Okay.
cool. Yeah, it was so cool. And he says to me, your man is right behind you. And I go, I know, I feel him. And he says to me, you need to visualize and call him in every day more than what you've been doing.
Oh.
So, and I said, okay, I trust it. He goes, abundance and prosperity is coming into your world in fluid amounts of like in all ways. And I go, I know, I feel it too. And he's
Yeah.
like, you just need to clear all this shadow in you, this doubt. And then it started thunderstorming at the exact same time that he said that. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was so cool. But I know, like I say to you, and just like you knew he is
Yes.
like, and even one of my girlfriends the other night at dinner was like, "Wow, I thought I just saw your guy beside you," and I'm like, "No, he's hot. Like
Yeah.
he's coming in almost. He almost has a chair right now. Like he's like right here, you know." And I'm like,
You know, as you're describing this, I am now understanding something that Abraham Hicks has said that I have struggled to understand over the years.
ah,
Because what I wanted to say to you was, oh my God, just milk that energy. And I didn't really get it the first. Well, listen, I've heard them say this many, many times, but there's me being on the other side of this now. I'm like, oh my God, there was so much beauty and amazing fun energy of being in the stage that you are in right now that I was
mhm,
trying to rush past.
mhm.
And like it, because it felt like to me, and this is, oh gosh, like, listen, these conversations that I have on this show are more for me than anybody else, just so you know. Um,
Welcome to podcast.
but they're amazing. I know. It's so good. I'm like, this is the dumbest, most incredible job ever because all I do is have conversations that benefit me and I record them and I share them. But okay, you all want to listen, so here we are. But anyways, what was I saying? This moment of I was mostly focused on what was missing and the fact that he wasn't next to me yet. And I was missing in moments the opportunity that I had to just sit in that energy. And there is something so incredibly magnetic and love filled about this phase that you are describing
Yeah,
that feels so good
yeah,
if we let it. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. It's almost like the anticipation of the thing is just as good, if not better, than the person or the money or the whatever fancy fucking shining car that we want materializing in front of us. Like both are
yeah,
good, but I wasn't necessarily milking it like Abraham Hicks
yeah.
says. And I'm like, oh, now I get
Yeah.
it. Now I get
Well, and it
it.
makes it so much like fun almost too. It's like like, and I've said the word curious a few times in
Yes,
this podcast. Like, it gets you back into this play like state of being a child. And if we live here,
absolutely.
then everything is fun. The way we show up in podcasts
Yes.
together, the way we do business, everything. Yeah, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. What a fun conversation we have had. This has been so amazing. I think amazing and I love it are the things that I say the most to my guests. But my last question for you is how can people find you?
yeah, so I like to play, and I say this on purpose, on Instagram. And some people are like, "Well, do you
Yes.
have a website?" I'm like, "No," like on purpose. So
Yeah.
come find me on Instagram. I'm sure it'll be in the show note links. But people are like
Yes, it
like
will.
offers and all that, and content, and I step into. I'm on it every day, like sharing something. So come and find me there. And like, if you listen to this podcast too, and I always say to everyone, come and let me know, like, what did you grab from the stories we were talking about, or come say hi. Like,
Absolutely.
I just love the interaction of like the universal alignment and how we get to connect with people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have had so much fun with this podcast. And this was definitely one of those follow my intuition, do what I was told to do moments because I had heard a single word in meditation for months. But how do I get my business to do? How do I attract the money? I'm all focused on whatever was, lacking in my life. How do I find the man? And all I kept hearing was write the damn book and then podcast,
Hmm.
podcast, podcast. And I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to start a podcast? Like, what? And here I am. And it has been so super fun. And I get to meet so many incredible people. I'm going to open it up to the men next season. I've already
Nice.
decided this because I've been so wholly focused on
Yeah.
women. But I'm expanding my horizons, and I will invite some men to join me next season. So anyways, I just can't thank you enough for being here with me and playing along. It's been so
It
fun.
has been. And thanks for listening to the poll and stepping into that space, and like that we got to meet, through the ethers, we'll say we got connected. So it's been great. Yeah. Thank you.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Well, we will definitely be in touch, and thanks again.
You're welcome.
Did you like this episode, or did you love it? Inquiring minds want to know. The best way to support this show is to subscribe and leave a review. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.